As we cross over the 2-week mark of this war, many things come to mind. The incompetency of those in Ukraine, the lust for power from those in Russia, and the foolishness of the West to think Russia would not retaliate. Most of all, though, I see the outpouring of support and posts of love and Slava Ukraina, and how we must help arm the government of Kiev to fight against the Russian devils, or a less offensive term. I see this constantly, throughout internal Russian forums to public posts. Hell, I can't find a mainstream Russian organization that doesn't have some type of letter or outpouring message of support for Ukraine. It doesn't surprise me, given that for most of our recent history, the perceptions of us have been unflattering, to say the least, and at worst, pawns of the Russian state or spies. I want you to put aside everything external for a moment. Like a mug, set it down onto the table. You can look at it, but do not sip from it. In this moment, I want you to think about ourselves and what this conflict and following environment will bring to us. Following that thread, I ask you, listener, a simple question. Are you with Ukraine or against the invasion? These two things may seem to be essentially the same, but are different in key ways. One is regarding the respect of a nation's territorial sovereignty, of not wanting innocents to be slaughtered, of not wanting gallons of blood to be spilling out onto the streets. And another is a fundamentally more patriotic declaration of support, throwing your future in with someone else. This question is important because, let me tell you, that if Ukraine survives in any real form from after this conflict, our treatment will be brutal. No manner of vapid public declaration will change that. So, cut the bullshit. Remember the past 30 years. This current government in Ukraine is, shall we say, hostile to us. Rather, we are treated as a poison to them, a rallying cry for mistreatment and oppression. And no matter how many times we have said we stand with Ukraine and we just want rights and we just want some type of regional autonomy, or at least being able to say who we are in public and not have to worry about violence against us or having, their Secret Service come and interview us and all these other things. How many times have our vapid declarations helped us in the past? I'm going to guess 0. And so I want you to think about that for a moment. Think about how bad things were for us before, how an even more nationalist government and populist will be to us afterwards. Now, this is not to say that the Russians are frankly much better. They will, as they have done throughout our history, they will attempt to impose on us a Russian identity. Or maybe, perhaps, if we're lucky, a Carpatho-Russian identity, and make us speak Russian, try to convince us that we are just part of the greater Russian nation, though there will probably be less violence. But yet, the end result of these two scenarios is the same. The state trying to assimilate us, trying to assimilate our people into theirs. And this may seem dystopian almost, but I think it's important to recognize that we lose on either side of this conflict. I urge you to think pragmatically. Neither Ukraine, nor Russia, nor the West, nor anybody is on our side. We are alone and pawns in this game. And so I urge you, instead of us devoting so much time and effort to virtue signaling that we are with Ukraine, or that attempting to help and give money to the Ukrainian army, I encourage you to remember who they are, and I encourage you to instead think inward. Think, how can we survive this conflict? Because while we are at the periphery, as we almost always have been, this outcome, regardless of which way, will be bad for us. So, regardless of if each one is bad for us, we must instead, at least in my humble opinion, focus on how to deal with that, rather than trying to support one side or the other. Now, if you choose to lay in with the promotion of Ukrainian nationalism, of patriotism, of attempting to help fund them and do all that you can to help Ukraine survive this war, do not be surprised of when you come home or when this is all over. Nothing will have changed, or if it has, it will be worse. But I am not telling you one way or the other. I am merely suggesting this as someone who shares only allegiance to Russians. Not to Ukrainians, not to Russians, not to either state. Just simply to the Russian people of the world. Just know that if you are choosing sides in this, you are helping to create something that will be impossible to deal with. Just like the Islamic groups funded against the Soviets in the 1980s, you cannot simply control what comes from this movement and from this conflict. This is not to say you should be passive, but instead of devoting so much time, as so many of us have done, to aiding a war effort for a state that doesn't even recognize us as a people, we should instead spend our time planning for the worst, planning for what will become of us. We should neither take the Russian side nor the Ukrainian side. We should instead remain a force of neutrality, because that is what we are. At the end of the day, though, I sincerely commend many of us in one respect, in that we all see the photos, we all see the carnage. And I'm not saying forget about that. I'm not saying you don't have to care or that you can't donate medical supplies and food and other such things, or giving somebody your house to stay at if you live in Europe. I'm not saying those things. What I am saying, though, is to be careful of devoting so much time while neglecting your own future. We shall not be the ones who decide the fate of our future rulers, but we can make things worse by ignoring our duty to ourselves. We are not the ones who decide who will rule over us, but we can decide how we handle it. I give these words now because I fear, as the Russian invasion grows deeper and conflict lines continue to form, that we are losing time. We are losing time for either way. I shouldn't even say either way. We are losing time just to formulate a strategy distinct for ourselves, regardless of who wins. Like I said, this who wins is not even a concern of this video right now. The concern is focusing on us. And as the days and weeks go by, as this conflict rages on, we lose time to recognize what is the best route for us, or at least how we are going to survive these situations coming up. And I know private conversations have already taken place about this. I have been part of some. But this needs to become public, not just private. Closed-door conversations can only do so much good when there's only such a small intelligentsia that we have. This needs to become a public conversation in which those of us who are, shall we say, activists, perhaps we can play a bigger role. But it is important to make this public and to make us focused, reorientate ourselves, to not be lost in the propaganda and the spectacle. Instead, remain calm. Think of what is the best route for us. And so I leave you with these thoughts in the hope that this begins, that we do snap out of this spectacle gazing. Remember who you are. Do not forget what has been done to us and by whom, no matter what is happening right now. I'll see you next time.